Weapons of mass destruction are usually in the hands of the local government, for better or worse. But if you look at things creatively, there are other options. To Howard Hughes, A Modest Proposal, by Joe Haldeman. Read by Karl. 13th October, 1975. Shark Key is a few hundred feet of sand and scrub between two slightly larger islands in the Florida Keys. Population 1. Not even one person actually lives there. Perhaps the name has not been attractive to real estate developers. But there's a locked garage, a dock, and a mailbox fronting on US 1. The man who owns this bit of sand, dock, box, and carport lives about a mile out in the Gulf of Mexico and has an assistant who picks up the mail every morning and gets groceries and other things. Howard Knopf Ramo is the sole resident of Shark Key. He has many assistants besides the delivery boy. Two of them have doctors in an interesting specialty, of which more later. One is a helicopter pilot. One ran a lathe under odd conditions. One was a contract killer for the Mafia. One is a youngish ex-colonel, West Point, 1960. 5 are doing legitimate research into the nature of gravity. 7 dozen are dullish quirks. And one, not living with the rest of Shark Key, is a U.S. senator who does not represent Florida, but nevertheless does look out for the interests of Howard Knopf Ramo. The researchers and the delivery boy are the only ones in Ramo's employ whose income he reports to the IRS. He only reports 1/10 of that. All the other gentlemen and ladies also receive 10 times generous salaries, but they're all legally dead, so the IRS has no rights to their money, and it goes straight to anonymously numbered Swiss accounts without attrition by government gabble. Ramo paid out a little more than $1 million in salaries and bribes last year. He considered it a sound investment of less than 0.001% of his total worth. 7th May, 1955. Our story began, well, many places with many people. But one pivotal person in place was 17-year-old Ronald Day, then going to high school in sleepy Winter Park, Florida. Ronald wanted to join the Army, but didn't want to just join the Army. He had to be an officer, and he wanted to be an academy man. His father had served gallantly in World War II and in Korea, until an AP mine in Chuncheon, Operation Ripper, forced him to retire. At that time, he had but 2 days of battlefield commission. He was finding the difference between NCO's retirement and officer retirement, with the difference between a marginal life and a comfortable one, subsequent to the shattering of his leg. Neither father nor son blamed the Army for having sent the senior Day marching through a muddy minefield, 1955 being what it was, and neither thought the military life was anything but the berries. More berries for the officers, of course, and the most for West Pointers. The other problem was that Ronald was, in the jargon of another trade, a chronic underachiever. He made fascinating hobbies and skills and an IQ of 180, but he was barely passing in high school and so had little hopes for an appointment. Until Howard Ramo came into his life. That spring afternoon, Ramo demonstrated to father and son he had the best interest in the United States at heart, but he had a good deal of money, nearly $100 million even then. He knew something rather embarrassing about senior Day. In exchange for certain reasonable considerations, he could get Ronald a place in West Point, class of 1960. Not too unpredictably, Ronald's intelligence blossomed in the straitjacket discipline at the Point. He majored in physics, that had been part of the deal, and took his commission and degree, with high honors, in 1960. His commission was in the engineers, and he was assigned to the Atomic Power Plant School at Fort Belvoir, Virginia. He took courses at the school and at Georgetown University nearby. He was Captain Ronald Day, and bucking for Major, one step from being in charge of personnel and recruitment, when he returned to his boat one evening and found Ramo waiting for him in a stiff-backed chair. Ramo was wearing the uniform of a brigadier general, and he asked a few favors. Captain Day agreed gladly to cooperate, not really believing the stars on Ramo's shoulders, partly because the favors seemed heartless and rather odd, but reasonable in view of past favors, mainly because Ramo told him something about what he planned to do over the next decade. It was not exactly patriotic, but it involved a great deal of money, and Captain Day, old times and more, had come to think more highly of money than of patriotism. Ramo's representatives met with Day several times in the following years, but the two men themselves not meeting again until early 1972. Day eventually volunteered for Vietnam, commanding a battalion of combat engineers. His helicopter went down behind enemy lines, such lines as there were in that war, in January 1972, and for 1 year he was listed as MIA. The North Vietnamese of Michigan released their list, and he became KIA, body never recovered. By that time, his body, quite alive and comfortable, was resting a mile off Shark Key. 5 December 1969. André Charval met Ronald Day only once at Fort Belvedere, 5 years before they would live together under Rameau's roof. André had dropped out of Iowa State as a sophomore, was drafted, was sent to the Atomic Power Plant School, learned the special skills necessary to turn radioactive materials into pleasing or practical shapes, left the Army, and got a job running a small lathe by remote control from behind several inches of lead, working with petroleum at an atomic power applications research laboratory in Los Alamos, being very careful not to waste any plutonium, always ending up with the weight of the finished piece and the shavings exactly equal to the weight of the rough piece he had started with. But a few milligrams at a time, he was substituting simple uranium for the precious plutonium shavings. He worked at Los Angeles for nearly 4 years, and bought 14.836 grams of plutonium with him when he arrived via midnight barge off Shark Key, 12th November 1974. Many other people in similar situations had brought their grams of plutonium to Shark Key. Many more would before the new year. 1 January 1975. Ladies, gentlemen, Howard Nofremo brushes long white hair back in a familiar delicate gesture, with the other hand raises the tumbler to eye level. It bubbles with good domestic champagne. Would anyone care to propose a toast? An awkward silence. Over 50 people crowded into the television room. On the screen, muted cheering as the Allied chemical ball begins to move. The honor should be yours, Rameau, said Colonel Day. Rameau nods, glancing at the television. 30 years, he whispers, and says aloud, to our year, to our world. Drunk silence, sudden chatter. 2nd January 1975. Curriculum vitae. My name is Philip Vale. I've been working with Howard Rameau for nearly 5 years. In 1967, I earned a doctorate in nuclear engineering at the University of New Mexico, and for 2 years on nuclear propulsion systems for spacecraft. When my project was shelved for lack of funding in '69, it was nearly impossible for a nuclear engineer to get a job, literally impossible in my specialty. We lived off savings for a while. Eventually, I had to take a job teaching high school physics, and felt lucky to have any kind of a job, even at $7,000 per year. By 1970, my wife suffered an attack and lost both kidneys. The artificial dialysis therapy was not covered by our health insurance, and to keep her alive would have cost some $25,000 yearly. Rameau materialized and made me a generous offer. 3 weeks later, Doris and I were whisked incognito to Shark Key, our disappearance covered by a disastrous automobile accident. His artificial island was mostly unoccupied in 1970, but half of one floor was given over to medical facilities. There was a dialysis machine, and 2 of the personnel were trained in its use. Rameau called it benevolent blackmail, and outlawed my duties for the next several years. 4 April 1970. When Philip Vale came to Rameau's island, all that showed above water was a golden geodesic dome, supported by massive concrete pillars and arm-thick steel cables that sang basso in the wind. Inside the dome were living quarters for 6 people and a more or less legitimate research establishment called Gravities, Inc. Rameau lived there with 2 technicians, a delivery boy and 2 specialists in gravity research. The establishment was very expensive, but Rameau came to love pure science, hoping for eventual profit, and admitted it made his tax situation easier. It also gave him the isolation that semi-billionaires traditionally prefer, because of the delicacy of the measurements necessary for research. No airplanes were allowed to buzz overhead, and the Coast Guard kept unauthorized ships from coming within a 1-mile radius. All 5 employees did do research work in gravity. They published with expected frequency, took out occasional patents, and knew they were only a cover for the actual work about to begin downstairs. There were 7 underwater floors beneath the Golden Dome, and Dr. Philip Vale's assignment was to turn those 7 floors into a factory for the construction of small nuclear bombs. 29 Nagasaki-sized fission bombs. August 1945. Howard Nofremo worked as the dollar-a-year man for several years, the government consulting him on organizational matters for various projects. The details of many projects were quite secret, but he gave as good advice as he could without being told classified details. In August 1945, Rameau learned what that Manhattan Project had been all about. 5th October 1970 through 3rd February 1972. Dr. Philip Vail was absorbed for several weeks in initial planning, flow charts, lists of necessary equipment and personnel, timetables, floor plans. The hardest part of this job was figuring out a way to steal a lot of plutonium without being too obvious about it. Raymond had some ideas on this and other things that Vail expanded. By the middle of 1971, there were 30 people living under Gravity's Inc., and plutonium had begun to trickle in, a few grams at a time, to a shooter with lead and cadmium and concrete and dropped into the Gulf of Mexico at carefully recorded spots within the 1-mile limit. In July, they quietly celebrated Rameau's 75th birthday. On 3rd February 1972, Colonel Ronald Day joined Vail and the rest. The two shared the directorship amicably, they suggesting they go ahead and make several mock-up bombs, both for time and motion studies within the plant, in order to check the efficiency of their basic delivery system, an Econoline-type van specially modified. Technological aside, one need not gather a critical mass of plutonium in order to make an atom bomb of it. It's sufficient to take a considerably smaller piece and set it to a neutron density equivalent to that which prevails at standard temperatures and pressure inside plutonium at critical mass. This can be done with judiciously shaped charges of high explosive. The whole apparatus can fit comfortably inside a Ford Econoline van. 9 September 1974. Progress Report. Delivery Implementation System. 2 Rameau Vail Day. Sections 258. As of this date, we can safely terminate R&D on the following vehicles: Ford, Fiat, Austin, VW. Each have performed flawlessly on trial runs to Atlanta. On-the-spot vehicle checks assure us we can use Econolines for Ghana, Bombay, Montevideo, and Madrid without attracting undue attention. The Renault and Soyuz vans have not been road tested because not distributed in the United States. One mock-up Renault is being shipped to Mexico, where they are fairly common, to be tested. We may be able to modify the Ford setup to fit inside Soyuz shell. However, we only have 2 of the Russian vans to work with, and we'll proceed with caution. The Toyota suspension gave out one of 3 Atlanta runs. It was simply not designed for so heavy a load. We must substitute Econolines or VWs for Tokyo and Kyoto. 90% of the vehicles were barged to New Orleans before the Atlanta run, to avoid suspicion at the Key Largo way station. We assure all systems will be in shape well before the target date. Signed, Supervisor Maxwell Bergman. 14th October 1974. Today they solved the China problem. Automobiles and trucks are still fairly rare in China, and its border is presumably the most difficult to breach. Rameau wants a minimum of 3 targets in China, but the odds against being able to smuggle out those vans, load them with bombs, smuggle them back in again, and drive to the target area without being stopped, the odds are formidable. Section 2, Weapons Research and Development, managed to compress a good-sized bomb into a package the size of a large suitcase, weighing about 800 pounds. It is less powerful than the others, and not as suitably safeguarded, read booby-trapped, but should be adequate to the task. It will go into Hong Kong a consignment of Swiss heavy machinery bound for Peking. Duplicates would go to Kunming and Shanghai, integrated with farm machinery and boat hulls, respectively, from Japan. Section 1, Recruiting, has found delivery agent for Peking and Shanghai, is looking for a native speaker of the dialect spoken around Kunming. Naming. Rameau doesn't like people to call it Project Blackmail, so they just call it the Project when he's around. 1 July 1975. Everything is in order. Delivery began one week ago. Today is Rameau's 79th birthday. His horoscope for today says, "Born today, you are a natural humanitarian. You aid those in difficulty and would make a fine attorney. You are attracted to the arts, including writing. You are due for domestic adjustment, with September indicated as a key month." None of the above is true. It would be in October. 13 October 1975. 7:45 on a gray Monday morning in Washington, D.C., a 3-year-old Econoline van rolls up to a park-yourself lot on 14th Street, about a quarter mile from the White House. The attendant gives the driver his ticket. "How long are you going to be?" "Don't know," he says. "All day, probably." "Put it back there, then, by the Camaro." A driver parks the van and turns the switch on the dash. With a tiny voltmeter, he checks the dead man switch in his arm. A constant readout wired to a simple signal generator. If blood pressure drops too low too quickly, Downtown Washington will be a radioactive hole. Everything in order, he gets out and locks the van. This activates the safeguards. A minor collision won't set off the bomb, and neither would a Richter 6 earthquake. It will go off if anyone tries to x-ray the van or enter it. He walks 2 blocks to his hotel. He is very careful crossing streets. He has breakfast set up and turns on his Today Show. There is no news of special interest. At 9:07, he calls a number in Miami. Ramo's fortune is down to $50 million, but he can still afford a suite at the Beachcomber. At 9:32, all American targets having reported, Ramo calls Reykjavik. Let me speak to Colonel Day. This is Ramo. Just one moment, sir. One moment. Day here. Things are all over here, Colonel. Have your sales been reported yet? All save 2, as expected, he says. Everyone but Peking and Kunming. Good. Everything's pretty much in your hands, then. I'm going to go down to do the commercial. Good luck, sir. We're past the need for luck. Be careful, Colonel. He rings off. Ramo shaves and dresses, white palm breech suit. The reflection in the mirror looks like somebody's grandfather. Not on for this world, kindly but a little crotchety, a little senile. Perhaps a little senile. That's why Colonel Day is coordinating things in Iceland rather than Ramo. If Ramo dies, Day can decide what to do. If Day dies, the bombs all go off automatically. Let's go, he shouts in the intervening room. His voice is still clear and strong. 2 men go down the elevator with him. One is the ex-hitman, with a laundered identity, complete the plastic surgery, and 2 hidden pistols. The other is Phil Vale. Carries with him all the details of Partick blackmail, and a real suggestion, a 44 Magnum single-shot Derringer. He watches the hitman, and the hitman watches everybody else. The Cadillac that waits for them outside the Beachcomber is discreetly bulletproof, and has under the front and rear seats, respectively, a Thompson submachine gun and a punctuated 12-gauge shotgun. The ex-hitman insisted on the additional armament, and Ramo provided them for the poor man's peace of mind. For his own peace of mind, Ramo, having no taste for violence on so small a scale, had the firing pins removed last night. They drive to a network-affiliated television station, having spent a good deal of money for 10 minutes of network time, for a paid political announcement. It only costs a trifle more to substitute their own men for union employees behind the camera and in the control room. Transcript. Fade-in long shot, Ramo, podium, globe. Ramo. My name is Howard Knopf Ramo. Slow dolly to MCU Ramo. Ramo. Please don't leave your seat. What I have to say is extremely important to you and your loved ones, and it won't take up too much more of your time. You probably never heard of me, though some years ago my accountants told me I was the richest man in the world. I spent a good deal of those riches staying out of the public eye. The rest of my fortune I spent on a project that has taken me 30 years to complete. I was born just 21 years after the Civil War. In my lifetime, my country has been in 5 major wars and dozens of small confrontations. Didn't consider reasons for most of them worthwhile. Don't think that any of them are worth the price we paid. And at that, we fared well compared to many other countries, whether they won their wars or lost them. Still, we continue to have wars. Rather, tighter Ramo, our leaders continue to declare wars, advancing their own political aims by sending sons and brothers and fathers out to bleed and die. Cut to medium shot, Ramo slowly turning globe. Ramo. We have tolerated situations throughout all of recorded history. No longer. China, the Soviet Union, and the United States have stockpiled nuclear weapons sufficient to destroy all human life twice over. It has gone beyond politics and become a matter of racial survival. I propose a plan to take these weapons away from them, every one simultaneously. To this end, I have spent my fortune constructing 29 nuclear bombs, 28 of which are hidden in various cities around the country. One of them is in an airplane high over Florida. It's the smallest one, a demonstration model, so to speak. Cut to remote unit, Pan Shoreline, Ramo, voiceover surf sound. This is the Atlantic Ocean, off one of Florida's keys. The bomb will explode 7 miles out at exactly 10:30. All shipping is cleared from the area, and prevailing winds will disperse the small amount of fallout harmlessly. 4 residents within 50 miles of Shark Key are warned not to look directly at the blast. Filter down and remote unit. Watch. There. After blast comes and fades, cut to tighter Ramo. Ramo. Whether or not you agree with me that all nations must give up their arms is immaterial. Whether I'm a saint or a powered drunk madman is immaterial. I give the governments of the world 3 days' notice, not just the atomic powers, but their allies as well. perhaps less than 3 days if they do not follow my instructions to the letter. Atomic bombs at least equivalent to the one that devastated Hiroshima and Nagasaki have been placed in the following cities: MCU, Ramo, and Globe. Ramo touch his globe as he names each city: Accra, Cairo, Khartoum, Johannesburg, London, Dublin, Madrid, Paris, Berlin, Rome, Warsaw, Budapest, Moscow, Leningrad, Novosibirsk, Ankara, Bombay, Sydney, Peking, Shanghai, Kunming, Tokyo, Kyoto, Honolulu, Akron, San Francisco, New York, Washington. The smaller towns of Novosibirsk, Kunming, and Akron, one for each major atomic power, are set to go off 8 hours before the others as the final warning. These bombs will also go off when tampered with or my representative harmed in any way. The way this will be done, and the manner in which atomic weapons will be collected, is explained in the letter now being sent through diplomatic channels to the leader of each threatened country. Copies will also be released to the world press. A colleague of mine has dubbed this effect Project Blackmail, unflattering but perhaps accurate. Cut to long shot Ramo, podium globe. Ramo, 3 days. Goodbye. Fade to black. Briefing. They didn't catch him? The president was livid. No, sir. They had to find out what studio the broadcast originated from and then get... Never mind. Do you know where the bomb is? Yes, sir. It's on page 6. The aide tentatively offered the letter, which a courier from the Polish embassy had brought a few minutes after the blast. Where? Has anything been done? It's in a public parking lot on 14th Street. The police? Northwest? Yes, sir. Good God, it's only a few blocks from here. Yes, sir. No respect for... Nobody's fiddled with it, have they? No, sir. It's booby trap 6 ways from Sunday. We have a bomb squad coming out, but it looks pretty foolproof. What about the representative you talked about? Let me see that thing. He'd handed the report. Actually, it's the closest thing we've got to the negotiator, but he's also part of the booby trap. If he's hurt in any way... What if the son of a bitch has a heart attack? The president sat back in his chair and lowered his voice for the first time. The end of the world. 17. Statistical interlude. A bomb will go off if any of the 28 people dies in the next 3 days. They will all go off if Ronald Day dies. All these men and women are fairly young and in good physical condition, but they're also under considerable strain and also perhaps unusually susceptible to accidental death. Say each of them has 1 chance in 1,000 of dying within the next 3 days. Then the probability of accident or catastrophic is 1 minus 0.999 to the 29th power. A number of cautionary cables were exchanged in the first few hours related to this computation. Evening. The Secretary of Defense gripped the edge of his chair and growls. That old fool could have started World War III. Atomic bombing Florida. Gave us ample warning, the chairman of the AEC reminds him. Principle of the goddamn thing. The president isn't really listening. What's past is over, and there's plenty to worry about for the next few days. He's chain smoking, something he never does in public and rarely in conference. Camels in a long filtered holder. Look, if we keep handing over all of our atomics. The president stabs out his cigarette, blows through the holder, lights another. All right, Sherman said. He has a list of our holdings, which he admits is incomplete. Takes off on his finger. He got a similar list from China, locations, minimum of delivery, yield. China's espionage has been pretty efficient. Another list from Russia. Between the three, there's among the three, I guess. Secretary of Defense makes a noise. He'll probably be able to disarm us completely. Makes his 10 of his figures. You start making a deal, I suppose? Partial list, yes. China's winning, Russia isn't. And Ramo is also getting lists from England, France, and Germany. Fairly complete if I know our allies. Wait, said the Secretary. France has bombs too. Halfway to Reykjavik already. What the hell are we going to do? Similar queries about the same time in Moscow and Peking. Morning. Telegrams and cables have been arriving by the truckload. The president's staff extracted them into 9-page reports. Most of them say, don't do anything rash. About 1 in 10 says call his bluff, most of them mentioning a communist plot. One of these even came from Akron. Didn't take them long to find Ramo. Luckily, he dismissed the bodyguard after returning safely to the beachcomber, so there was no bloodshed. Right now, he's in a condition somewhere between house arrest and protective custody. Half of Miami's police force and a large contingent from the FBI and CIA surrounding him and his very important phone. He talks to Reykjavik, and Day tells him all the experts have arrived. 239 atomic scientists and specialists in nuclear warfare, a staff of technical translators, and a plane of observers from the UN's International Atomic Energy Agency. Except for the few from France, no weapons have arrived. Day is not surprised, and neither is Rameau. Rameau is saddened to hear that several hundred people were killed in panicky evacuations in Tokyo, Bombay, and Khartoum. Evacuation 1 are proceeding in an orderly manner. Washington is under martial law. In New York and Paris, a few rushed out, and people are just sitting tight. A lot of people in Akron have decided to see what's happening in Cleveland. Noon. President's intercom buzzes. "We found Rameau's man, sir. I suppose you searched him. Send him in." A man in shirt sleeves walks between two uniformed MPs. He's a hawk-faced man with sardonic expression. "This is rather premature, Mr. President. I was supposed to sit down." He flops for an easy chair. "Supposed to call on you at 3:30 this afternoon. You no doubt have some sort of deal to offer?" The man looks at his watch. "You must be hungry, Mr. President. Take a long shower, maybe a nap. I'll have plenty to say at you. Don't worry about me. I'm already eaten. I'll wait here." "We can be very hard on you." Rolls up his left sleeve. 2 small boxes and some wiring as taped securely to his firearm. "No, you can't. Not for 3 days. You can't kill me or even cause me a lot of pain. You can't drug me or hypnotize me." This last is a lie. "Even if you could, it wouldn't be any good to you." "I believe it would." "We can discuss that at 3:30. Leans back and closes his eyes. "What are you?" He opens one eye. "A professional gambler." That's also a lie. Back when he had to work for a living, he ran a curious kind of lathe. 3:30 p.m. The president comes to a side door and sits at his desk. "All right, have your say." The man nods and straightens up slowly. "First off, let me explain my function." "Reasonable." "I'm a gadfly, a source of tension." "That is obvious." "I can also answer certain questions about that bomb in your backyard." "Here's one. How can we disarm it?" "That I can't tell you." "I believe we can convince you." "No, you don't understand. I don't know how to turn it off. That's someone else's job." Third lie. "I do know how to blow it up. Hurt me or kill me or move me more than 10 miles from ground zero. Or I can just pull this little wire." Touches the wire and the president flinches. "All right, what else are you here for?" "That's all. Keep an eye on you, I guess." "You don't have any sort of message? Any—" "Oh, no, you've already got the message. Through the Polish embassy, I think." "Come on now, I'm not naive." The man looked at him curiously. "Maybe that's your problem. Mr. Ramos' demands are not negotiable. He really is doing what he says. Taking atomic weapons away from all of you strange people." "What sort of deal do you think you could offer an 80-year-old millionaire, ex-billionaire? How would you propose to threaten him?" "We can kill him." "That's right. 3 days we can kill you." The man laughs politely. "Now you're being naive." The president puts the switch on his intercom, sending Carson and Major Anfield and the 2 MPs. The 4 men come in immediately. "Take this man somewhere and talk to him. Don't hurt him." "Not yet," the civilian Carson says. "Come on," one MP says to the man. "I don't think so," the man says. He stares at the president. "I'd like a glass of water." 15 October 1975. The only nuclear weapons in the United States are located in Colorado, Texas, Florida, and of course San Francisco, Washington, D.C., and Akron, Ohio. 16 October 1975, 2:30 a.m. The only nuclear weapons in the United States are located in Colorado, Texas, Florida, San Francisco, and Washington, D.C. There is no Akron, Ohio. Of the 139 who perished in the blast, 138 were very gutsy looters. 10 o'clock a.m. Only San Francisco and Washington now. The others are on their way to Reykjavik. The man who was named Andrei Shavar walks down a deserted 14th Street with a 9-volt battery in his hand. A civilian and 2 volunteer MPs walk with him. He walks straight up to the economized rear bumper and touches the terminal of the battery to 2 inconspicuous rivets. There's a small spark and a click like the sound of a pinball machine tilting. That's all. It's controlled by Reykjavik now. And Reykjavik is half controlled by communists, and worse, traitors, Carson says huskily. He doesn't answer, but walks on down the street alone. Amnesty. In a few minutes, a heavy truck rumbles up, and men in plain coveralls construct a box of boilerplate around the Econoline. People start coming back into Washington, and a large crowd gathers, watching as they cover the box with a marble facade and affix a bronze plaque to the front. The man who owned the parking lot received a generous check from the Nuclear Arms Control Board in kroner. Quote, Nuclear Warfare. This article consists of the following sections. 1. Introduction. 2. Basic principles, fission weapons, fusion weapons. 3. Destructive effects, theoretical, Hiroshima and Nagasaki, Akron and Novosibirsk. 4. History. World War I, Cold War, Treaty of Reykjavik. 5. Conversion to peaceful uses, theory and engineering, and administration under NACB, inspection procedures. For related articles, see Day, Ronald R., Einstein, Albert, Energy, Fermi, Enrico, Nuclear Sciences, several articles, Rimmel, Howard K., Vale, Philip, Warfare History of. Copyright 2020 by Encyclopedia Britannica Incorporated. The end.